We can't hear you, Liftar Carter.
I'm not sure we're supposed to.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the interpreter.
She's
maybe
translating it. She's like, we don't hear it.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got 17 participants, 18. We're opening up. Welcome, everybody. We'll just wait a couple of moments, and then we'll chant and attune ourselves. Well, might as well do that now. So let's put our hands together. We'll Adgare Name 3 times. Adgare Name, Adgare Name, Satgare Name, Siri Gurudev Name, Adgare Name, Jugadgare Name, Satgare Name, Siri Gurudev Name, Adgare Name, Jugadgare Name, Satgare Name, Siri Gurudev Name. So welcome everybody. Before I introduce everyone, almost rude, first you want to introduce people, but just technically, I know we have a lot of Spanish speakers today. And so if you need interpretation, go to the bottom of your screen. There's a globe there and click interpretation and follow that through. I'm not expert in this myself, but just experiment, click where it works for you. I'm probably going to say Spanish, English. I think what we do is click the language that you want to hear. And today we don't have any Spanish speakers, but today if you want to hear English, click English, or if you're just an English speaker anyway, just ignore that. Okay. So, Krishna has made a request that she not go first. So we're going to just ignore Krishna for a little bit. How about Guru Amrit Singh is there, and I'll just give brief introductions, and then we'll go from there. I've got his the bio that he gave us. He is formerly treasurer of the Siri Singh Sahib Corporation, formerly a member of the Sikh Dharma of Virginia Board of Directors, formerly the Herndon Ashram Administrative Council, also in Virginia, and formerly Missile Leader of the Raj Khalsa Gurdwara, also in Virginia. That's formerly. He's currently Minister of Sikh Dharma, currently on the Sikh Dharma Khalsa Council, and currently on the Sikh Dharma National. He's currently a Sikh Dharma National Affairs Advisor, and currently on the Sikhnet Board of Directors. So that's Guru Amrit Singh. By the way, I'm Guru Fateh Singh. I'm hosting this. I'm Toronto. Amrit Singh, we'll go to him next. He's called the Mukhia Jathedar. That means he has a lot of responsibility in Espanola community. He's the president of Guru Amar Das Corporation, which oversees and manages the Siri Singh Sahib Gurdwara, a Khalsa Gurdwara in Espanola. He's also a board member and president of the Hacienda de Guru Ram Das Corporation, which guides the Espanola community and handles finances for the ashram in Espanola, the mother ashram, sometimes we call it. He is 8 years in the finance department of Akal Security, and now a current Akal Global board member. He is a licensed general contractor and property manager for Legacy of Yogi Ji Foundation, and 7 years as a Siri Singh Sahib Corporation board member and chair of the Siri Singh Sahib Corporation Finance Committee, and he's a member of the International Khalsa Council. So that's Amrit Singh is on the right of my screen. And then we can't ignore Krishna altogether. We'll give her an intro. Krishna Kaur, this is what her website says. It's very short and sweet. It says, brings a wealth of knowledge and experience from her teaching in Africa, Mexico, and inner cities throughout the United States. I know she came to Toronto too. A master teacher, trainer of Kundalini Yoga, as taught by Yogi Bhajan. She conducts workshops in the United States, Canada, Europe, Africa, Asia and Latin America. And I know she has a couple of kids. You know, in Japji it says, Ek mai jugat vihai, tin chele pravan. So she, in a very immaculate way, she has yoga for youth as one of her kids. I think some grandchildren there now. And also she is one of the creators of the Black Teachers Yoga Association, I believe it's called. And so she also helped to create that. I'm sure there's more we can say about just everybody. But that's just by way of introduction. Satnam, everybody. How about Guru Amrit Singh? Would you like to unmute yourself and just tell us a little bit about how you came here? You want to do that? And I'll mute myself.
Yeah. Let me just start off with something that's kind of stayed in my head for a long time that the Siri Singh Sahib said. He said, I have never let down Guru Ram Das, and Guru Ram Das has never let me down. So that's kind of where I start. You know, I mean, everybody has their origin story, which I'll tell you real quick in a minute. But I just want to say that my relationship to him is about his relationship to Guru Ram Das. You know, I can, I mean, in my limited way, I can see a human being, and I'm extremely grateful for the fact that he was here and he introduced me. It makes it a lot easier than just going right to Guru Ram Das. You know, I'm not quite there yet. You know, I can, in my heart of heart and deepest heart, I just bow my head. But my relationship to Yogi Bhajan is really based on his relationship to Guru Ram Das, and that one thing where he has bowed his head to Guru Ram Das, and Guru Ram Das has bowed his head back. That's the core of my world. But I will tell you how I got started in time and space. I started in college I'm 63. I was 19. I started doing yoga in college. My teacher near Basing in the Princeton Ashram was a Sikh, and I started doing it, and I started realizing all these things that I'd tried to understand all my life, and just in that peace and silence and quiet and energy flow, I realized, okay, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for. And then I asked him, why are you a Sikh? I had no interest in being a Sikh, but I was curious, and he said, well, because everything about being a Sikh is about, it is really just an extension of yoga. The turban, there's yogic reasons around everything, and it's just an extension to increase your awareness and bring your consciousness into a higher realm. So I said, well, what the hey, I want that. I don't necessarily want to be a Sikh, but I'll live the lifestyle, and I'll see what happens. So I actually moved into an ashram as a non-Sikh, shaved every day, but I did sadhana every day. No pressure from anybody to put on a turban or anything. But after a while, I just said, well, either you got to run with it or stop. So I put on a turban, and then about a year into living in the ashram, there was a men's course that came to Pennsylvania, which I went to, and I was really excited about meeting Yogi Bhajan. I'd heard all about. And I walked in. I was a little late, and we walked into the auditorium, and there were, I don't know, probably 200 men there. And here was Yogi Bhajan sitting on the stage, talking about eating pea fruits for men. And it was like nothing I'd expected. I had been doing transcendental meditation and everything, I thought a spiritual teacher was, a little guy who just talked about very abstract concepts, in very lofty terms. And here was this guy giving recipes on, how to sustain yourself as a man. And I thought this is just too much. And and then, yeah, I'll just skip to the highlights. And then, but you know, I went through that and actually learned a lot about pea fruits. And then later on, I think he came to a tantric, to give a tantric near the Princeton ashram, and he called me over and he said, I'm going to set up where you can go to India and learn the Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib under this famous Gyani. And I'm going to do this and this and this, and you'll have this role and this role and da 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 da. And I was like, you know, to be honest, I was kind of a, you know, I took it for granted, put it that way. I can use some harsher terms, you know, looking now back on my prior self, but put it this way, I took it for granted. And then later on, I had another meeting with the Siri Singh Sahib, and he said, well, what do you think? Are you moving on? And I said, well, you know, I'm really not sure about this path because I'm really looking for something permanent. And he just kind of nodded his head. And then about a week later, he called up and said, oh, by the way, that Gyani has died. And these other things we were going to do, the opportunity's gone. And that's all he said. And that blew my mind. I mean, I don't know today what actually caused me to react in such a way, but I was horrified. I was terrified that you know how in Christianity they say, you know, the fear of God, you know, you should always fear the fear of God. This was like the fear of not having God, and it was terrifying. And that's kind of what solidified me. And today I can say, you know, completely authentically, I am a Sikh and I'm a student of Yogi Bhajan. And that's where it all started. Sanam.
Waheguru, thank you. I always wondered what your story was. I knew your wife's story to a degree. She was born into it, but that's one for the book. You know, I'm writing the book. That goes into the biography if I can just access it. And everything's being recorded, you know. It's one way I have of getting your stories out of you guys. You know, I bring you, give you a stage, make
everybody has a story, and it's all personal. And you know, the funny thing is that when I got into Sikh, I'll tell you a funny story. I don't want to take too much time, but I realized we have 3 hours. But you know, I had been part of TM, and TM is really a massive movement. And you know, you come to courses and you do this, and it's, you know, it's very structured. And when I became a Sikh, I thought, well, you know, this is another institution, and I'm going to participate in this institution. But what I realized, and this is funny because I'll tell you when I realized it was, I was in Delhi, and we went to the Siri Singh Sahib's house in Nizamuddin, and I went up to the front door and I rang the doorbell, and somebody answered and they said, Yogi Bhajan's not here, but BBG is here. So I said, oh, okay, can I just say hello? And she said, so she turned around and she said, BBG so-and-so is here. I went, okay. So whoever answered the door said, go upstairs. So I go upstairs and BBG calls me in, and she's in bed watching TV with her kids, right? She doesn't know me from Adam. And I walk in the door and she opens up the sheets and says, jump in. And I'm like, you know, so I jump in and we're watching TV, you know, in her bed. And it was so sweet, you know, it was so sweet and so personal. And I realized this is personal. You know, this is not, you know, the way it manifests is very, very personal. It's not a path of joining a crowd. Everybody has their own very personal statement and path and experience, which, you know, I've got one. I love hearing everybody else's because they're all beautiful. anyway, sadnam.
Thank you. Thank you. That's precious too. I mean, I so much broaden my horizons, and because this is being recorded, you know, this is going to broaden everybody's horizon in the future who is trying to figure out just exactly what we did, why we were doing it. Who cares to go next? Yeah, Krishna? Or no? You're saying no? Amrit, you up for it?
Sure.
All right,
I
go
get
for it.
I'll go next.
I had a path that was through seeking knowledge. I had a voracious appetite for metaphysical knowledge, and I was working down in Plymouth, Massachusetts, and my day off, I was the director of a program down there for, I don't know what they call them nowadays, but they were basically delinquents. Emotionally disturbed youth. So I had a Tuesday was a day off, and I used to go down to the library when they opened, and that's when they put the new books out on Tuesday morning. And I would look through the books. I'd get whatever I could find, 2 or 3 books of, you know, metaphysical exploration, and I would go back and I would read them in the following week. And then I'd kind of like toss them aside and go, you know, that's not it, you know. And then I was up again on my day off. I was going back to, I had gone to school in Western Massachusetts, at University of Massachusetts in Amherst. And I knew the area. So I'm just kind of driving around. I had seen an article in the East-West Journal, which was a paper written out of Boston about yoga and meditation. And I had seen a thing about it. And, it had mentioned Ram Dass. I think it was Timothy Alpert, his assistant. I forget. Anyway, I said, well, I should go out there and see what's going on out there, see what they know. So I'm driving through this little town in Western Massachusetts, which happened to be Montague. And I picked up a hitchhiker and said, you know, I'm looking for Ram Dass, whatever. He goes, oh, you must mean the gurus. You're looking for the gurus. So he directed me up to the Montague ashram, up this little windy road in the back of woods. And on the porch there was this gentleman, Guru Shabad Singh, who was also a scholar. He had a PhD, you know, he was a very intelligent human being. At that time, later he lost his mind, but that's another story. So I started talking to him about metaphysics and things, and he basically told me about Yogi Ji and what he had taught and what he taught every single day, day after day after day after day. And I realized this man knows more than any other person I have ever encountered. And he just had a depth and a wealth of knowledge that was beyond imagining, because you could have taken any one of those lessons or, you know, yoga things that he had taught, and you could just get into that, and that would be all you'd need. So I went back, and then Guru Shabad said, and some wisdom he had, he said, look, you have to understand that this is not an intellectual pursuit. This is experiential. You have to experience this in order to understand it. So I suggest you go to a yoga class. So I went to a yoga class at UMass, and it was great. I loved it. I'm a very physical person, and it was very difficult. And I actually got beyond that point where you're trying to meditate, but you actually can meditate because you've stimulated your glands and your nerves to the point where you can actually break through. So I had a breakthrough meditation. I'm going, this is it. This is perfect. So I got the little sheet they give at class. You know, I get these exercises, and I'm saying, this is bliss. This is perfect. Went back to work in Plymouth, Massachusetts, and it was Kundalini calisthenics. So then a couple days later, I'm there, and I try to do Kundalini calisthenics, which is 30 minutes without a pause, right? Just really hard. And I'm physically capable. I couldn't do it. I couldn't get to the end of this thing. So I went back the next week and I got a hold of Guru Shabbat and said, what, I couldn't finish it. I couldn't do it. He said, because in the class, you benefited from the group energy that exists in a yoga class. And it propelled you to be able to go through to another level. So I said, that's it. I went back to Plymouth. I handed in my resignation. And a couple of weeks later, I moved into the ashram. I tied a turban the day I moved in, and I've never had it off my head since. I knew that this was what I had come to Earth to do, is to be on the path of Sikh Dharma and the knowledge of yoga and meditation. I helped to run Montague for Guru Shabbat, and actually, I hadn't met the Siri Singh Sahib yet. It was another 6 or 7, 8 months later that he came into town to do a tantric course. And the first words I heard him say were very like Garam was saying, not what you'd expect from a spiritual, entity. He comes in, he doesn't really say anything, he walks in. We had spent like 3 or 4 days or a week in the outpost. You had to clean up everything and get everything ready when the Siri Singh Sahib came, because he had an exacting standard, and normal life did not have an exacting standard. So you go around cleaning and polishing everything, getting it ready. So we're all tired. So he kind of walks in, he goes into the restroom. And the first thing I heard him say is, Guru Shabbat, I told you to put a lock on this bathroom last year, and you still haven't done it. And that's when I knew that this is a man that I could understand and relate to. A year or so later, he came and we did the Yogi Tea thing, where he stayed there for a week, and we were developing the formula for Yogi Tea, and I would brew up a pot of Yogi Tea with 4 cloves, and I'd take it in. I'd have like 6 cups on the plate, and one would have 4 cloves and one would have 5 cloves, and the whole thing with all the different spices. And he'd taste it and test it, and then he finally got it down to, I must have made 60, 70 little pots of Yogi Tea, and it got it down to the point where this is the formula that I want to be made. We were already making it, but we adjusted the formula rather than that. And then, I could go on with stories about stuff, but I had a relationship with him that was basically, I was in service to him for a long time here in Espanola. When I moved out to Espanola, I like to do things. I'm a very kind of busy person. I do a lot of things. I'm contracting and building artwork and all sorts of things. And he utilized, that's why he made me Jathedar. He liked to utilize my skill sets to do different things for him. I would build for him. And I also have interpersonal skills from working in the psychology field. And he would send me to get somebody in the middle of the night and bring them and all sorts of things, But I was on call basically for 20 some odd years, 24/7, to be able to serve what he needed to have done to help him serve the mission. And it was very, very enjoyable. That's how I ended up at a call after he died. I meditated on what I could do that would engender the mission or support the mission to the best of my skill set. And I realized that a lot of what we are limited by here, especially here in Espanola, is the monetary flow. So I figured out that if I worked at a call, maybe I could help to generate money to serve the Dharma. So I did that for about 8 years. And then I got another call that said, the person that was doing the legacy of Yogi Ji Foundation in charge of the grounds and the property management stuff had quit, just walked away. So they're asking me, as one of the leaders in the community, say, who can do this? They're calling from Boston, they're calling from, DC, and say, do you know anybody that can do this? And I started thinking about it, realized I'm really the only one that can do it. Most of the things I worked on, I built. So I've been doing that now since 2013. And it's a lot. Last year we had a tremendous surge of activity. We spent a couple $1 million on the Solstice site, and I supervised the pouring of over 4.5 million pounds of concrete up there. And it's really a pretty dramatic facility now. And there's a lot still to do. We're going to finish it in this coming year. And we didn't have a solstice, which was just an interesting kind of God's play for us, what we go through and what we do and what we end up with. But I have a very, very full existence here. Now, my time on the Siri Singh Sahib Corp, it was inexplicably, when it started, it was inexplicably confusing to me. The process that we had set up with 17 individuals trying to decide something, because I'm kind of a, quick decider person. And we were in this elaborate discussion process, just on and on about stuff. And it started to wear on me just within a month or two that my spiritual practice was not strong enough to maintain my mental capacity in this, with being on the Siri Singh Sahib Court. So I said, okay, I'm gonna take it to the Guru. So I started going to Gurdwara in the morning. And I actually haven't missed since that first time about 8 years ago that I started going to Gurdwara every morning and listening to Guru's Bani and being at the feet of my Guru. And that kind of helped to carry me through some of the incomprehensible morass of issues and problems that the Siri Singh Sahib Corporation had to deal with. So anyway, that's where I am right now. I went to Gurdwara this morning. It was absolutely blissful. And here I sit. Waheguru.
Waheguru. Thank you, Jathedar Sahib. Again, it's so great. So you see people face value, but you don't know the story behind it. It's like you get a chance to read their forehead, read their palm, the destiny that brought them, the recent destiny. So, Krishna, there's only one person left. Can you fill in?
Oh, I was trying to say I'd go next, and I didn't have myself unmuted, and so all my waving and gestures was not getting through. But it's beautiful. I really want to appreciate you for inviting us to be here. I feel very honored, and to hear the stories also of Amrit Singh and Amrit Singh Jathedar. And of course, it sends me back into the memory of how I got started, and it's these stories can be very long, so I'll try to keep mine very short. I've always been a very religious kid. I loved church. I became a Catholic, and I was a good Catholic, and I was very devout. But I did some things that you weren't supposed to do as a Catholic. I loved taking communion, and I loved all the stories, all the chanting in this foreign language and all of this. It was very fascinating for me. And I realized one day that God knows everything that I'm doing. Why am I going to this priest to confess my stories, And I was also making them up because I was a good kid. So I was making them up just so I could go to confession, take communion. And so one day I said, well, why don't I just talk to God? He knows everything anyway. And the priests are going to tell me to do 10 Hail Marys and 5 active contritions. And I know that by heart by now because it's been the same story for years. And so I just did it myself and went and did communion. And I felt just as great as I always had. So that was kind of like my kind of self-initiating myself in my relationship with God. Then I was I performed in the theater in New York in the mid 60s. And I began to become challenged again about asking myself, how am I supposed to worship God? Because I'd gotten disillusioned by the Catholic Church and the Baptist churches and all these churches. I said, how am I supposed to worship God? And I began just traipsing around trying to figure it out. And I realized that what I'm looking for a faith that sees God everywhere, knows that God is in all things and all people, and that it's a part of a community that gathers to celebrate and to honor that. Um, and that the job is service. Well, I couldn't find that anywhere in New York. And I began also asking myself as a Black woman, why am I here? What am I supposed to do with my life? How am I supposed to serve my people in a meaningful way? And so those two challenges and those two questions were just gnawing at me for years, and I was suffering so much. And finally, an opportunity came for me to hop onto a play that was going to be presented in Scandinavia with E.G. Marshall and a few other guys in there. And my mentor in New York at the time was a young man who was learning to become an African priest. And so he was teaching me the African style of cleaning my house, the African style of doing these things. He told me that I had to become a vegetarian, which I thought was shocking, but I did. And I began to just follow his instruction. When he realized that I was going to be going to Europe, he says, don't come back across the Atlantic Ocean until you've gone to Africa, because that's where you're going to find all your answers in Africa. And I was obedient. And so I did that. Before I could get to Africa, I ended up traipsing through Europe, all of Scandinavia, Russia, Germany, even when the wall was still up there, all over the place, still searching and looking and trying to find my way to get to Africa because I didn't have any money. So first I tried to take a boat. I thought I could work on this boat. I could catch a boat in Casablanca and get to Casablanca, but they wouldn't hire me because I was a girl, which didn't make any sense to me because I could work just as much as a guy could work. So why couldn't I be added onto this boat, But anyway, I found my way down there through Algiers and managed to meet people that kept me moving through Africa. So I was in Africa for a year, in Senegal for 3 months. I was in Guinea for 3 months, Ghana, and then Nigeria. And I learned a lot about the African culture, and still something was not quite missing for me. And I left there knowing that I was a child of Africa, but there was more than that. And I just came to the United States, folded up my apartment in New York, which had been sitting there for 2 years. I thought I'd be gone for 3 months, but I was gone for 2 years. And the African cleaning that took place in my apartment that this beautiful mentor helped me do kept my apartment totally safe, even though it was in a very terrible neighborhood. But I went home to visit my family, and with my brother in Colorado, I wandered down to this place in Boulder where he said there's a Holy Man's Jam taking place down here. And do you want to go? And I said, yeah, well, sure, why not? I'm doing everything else. I might as well try that. And there were some people out there on the lawn doing this crazy movement. They're on their hands and knees and flexing their back and like this, And I thought that was so un-yogic, But then my brother started doing it, and I thought, oh, well, if he's doing it, I'm going to do it too, And I finished the class, and like the others have said, I just had an experience that I never, ever had before. And I didn't even know what was happening to me, but it felt right. And all along the way, I've been using my intuition. My motto was, as long as it feels right, I'm staying. The minute it stops feeling right, I'm moving on. And so it just never stopped feeling right. And I met Yogi Bhajan at I think it might have been the first White Tantra course in Phoenix back in 1970. He yelled at me and screamed at me in the airport, and I couldn't understand why. Everyone turned around to look at me and see, why is he talking to this girl like that? She doesn't know anything, you know? And I had really felt that Kundalini yoga was going to be too hard for me because it was kicking my butt. And I wanted to do something that was going to be a little more, you know, soothing and more relaxing and more hatha-like. And he turned to me and he says, "What do you want from me?" Screaming, his eyes got big and everything. "What do you want from me?" And I said to myself, who's he talking to? You know, he doesn't know me. You know? He says, "If you want to be with me, you're going to have to work. If you want it easy, go someplace else." And I said, "I'm not afraid to work." And there was my commitment. I had no idea. But I took the challenge, and I spent those 10 days doing white tantric yoga. And we could only eat fruit that grew 4.5 feet or higher above the ground, and all of this. And it was just a horrible experience. My body was killing me. I just didn't know what was happening, but something else felt so right and so good that I couldn't stop. About the third day, he says, "When you come to Los Angeles, come and see me." I said, "How does he know I'm going to Los Angeles?" You know? He says, "I've never seen anyone's aura change so fast in my life in 3 days," you know? And I thought, what's he talking about? I'm suffering here. I'm suffering. You know? And so I went to see him, and I sat with him for a few minutes, and, you know, took my problem with me to him and just said, "I can't find my brother. We're worried about him. I wonder if you could help me find my brother." And I had taken him this bowl of fruit, and he was eating the fruit, and he kept saying, "So?" I said, "Well, I'm worried." "So?" "Well, my family's worried." "Well, so?" You know, he just wasn't buying into the fact that I was really worried. And then I began to realize that I wasn't really worried, but I felt I should be worried. My whole family was worried. My whole family was just so afraid of what my brother was into and what was happening to him. And by the time he got through saying "so," I started asking myself, well, is this really, do I really feel worried? Or is this something that I'm carrying from my family? And I had to just let it go and realize that I was not worried. And then he yelled at me and told me I had to start teaching, which was another trauma. Anyway, I got through that, taught my first class. I thought, okay, now are you through with me? Can I relax and just be in this class, you know? And then he says, "Okay, when you come to the Good Word, the Sikh study circle tomorrow, and meet me there." I said, "Oh God, what next?" You know? And I'm sitting there in this very noisy place. You know, it wasn't quiet or calm or peaceful like the Catholic Church at all. It was just so much activity and things being served and stuff happening, people talking and chatting. So I'm just standing against the wall, just listening to it all, watching and just thinking, whoa, this is interesting. Then he started calling me by my nickname, T.O., T.O., T.O. He yelled and screamed. And finally I came there and said, "Okay, yes, what, just stop yelling. Yes, what. Then he named me Krishna and made me promise that I would always be Krishna. And I thought, oh my God, you know. And when I said, yes. You know, I just would say yes just to stop the yelling. But deep inside, I always knew that I would only stay as long as it made sense. I trusted my intuition through a year of trekking through Europe, hitchhiking here and there in scary situations, trekking through Africa, walking away from my career in New York. You know, just whatever was happening to me at that time was so unlike me. But only thing I hung on to was the fact that if it stopped making sense, I would leave. That was June 1970. And I'm still here. And I realized that I was in a lot of firsts there. I always wrapped my head in this African style, except it was colorful, matching my dresses and things. And I never stopped doing it. And one of the staff came to me and asked me to show them how to do this. And because then the women were wearing little rishi knot covers with little doilies over them. And so I showed one of them and they didn't do it. I showed another one and they showed it to Yogi Bhajan. He says, "Good. Now every woman should do that." before this was just Krishna. You know, Krishna had her unique thing about everything, you know. But I was being genuine. I was always honoring and grateful. And for me, the thing that really turned me on to Yogi Bhajan was that he sounded like my mother. My mother said things I'd never heard anyone say in my life. And I said, but my mother said that. Mother said that, you know, mother said that. And she would say that God is everywhere. You know, it doesn't matter how you choose to worship God, God is everywhere. Just listen to your heart, and whatever you do, make sure you honor it, you respect it, you know, but God is everywhere. And so many things he would say that she said that were just so astounding to me that I just kept finding more and more detail, more and more things that made sense, made sense, made sense, made sense. And so they still make sense. And to this day, you know, I'm here because it makes sense. You know, the core of it makes sense. The teachings make sense, you know, and I believe them deeply. I honor them and I live them and I teach them and I will always honor them. And for me, that man, that being that could see in me what I needed and could push me and not allow me to give up on myself. I needed that and I wanted that and I always trusted that. And so Yogi Bhajan is my teacher. He was my teacher. He'll always be my teacher. The teachings, I honor them. They make sense. And I will always honor them. And I will always teach them, not just in honor of him, but also in honor of my soul's longing to find out why I was born. Why am I here? How am I supposed to serve my people? And how am I supposed to worship God? Those questions I had in New York were all answered. And so, why could, you know, so there are a lot of firsts in my here, you know, the first Khalsa Council person, the first this and that. And you know, it's beautiful to just see how those seeds have grown and developed. And it's beautiful to see how we're now being tested. It's good to know that the Guru trusts us enough that we could have this test and we could be shown, you know, all the sides of us. And if we can hang on to the belief, if we have that belief, that if you can't see God at all, you can't see God at all, you know, and that you can make a 180-degree turn, but just don't lose your balance, you know. I mean, these teachings are just grounded deep inside of me. And I'm grateful for these times. I'm grateful for the challenge. And my prayer is that our community can really hang on and get through the turbulence and begin to understand what is true and what is not true. What is true and what is not true. And I think that when this pandemic hit and all this stuff was going on, I was in Africa and I looked over the sky and I said, oh, wow, what do you want? What do you want? You know, what do you want now? What do you want from us? And what I got was this idea that the Aquarian age, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen through you. And these are the things you're going to be encountering, you know? The Aquarian age is not some lily pad with all these beautiful things and, you know, sun shining all the time and birds tweaking. It's, you can hold on to whatever your belief is through all of the challenges and all the madness and all the pain and all the suffering. If you cannot stand and hold your balance in the midst of all the suffering, then you're not going to be helpful in this transition from Piscean to Aquarian. And so I settled down and said to myself, I'm not going anywhere. So that's the beginning of my story.
Waheguru. Waheguru. It's a long story, but it's a little excerpt of your long story. Little teeny one. And lots of parts that I never heard before. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, as you observed, Guru, we have 3 hours. You know, got any anything else you want to add, or Amrit Singh? We've been around for a while.
So much to talk about, and you know, also on the Siri Singh Sahib Corp, one of the original members on that, and I wasn't sure that I should be on it, and I took a long time to decide when the first group of us was elected. But I felt that since I had been asked by several people if I wanted to be a part of it or not, if I should be nominated or not, or whatever, I felt that there was some calling for me to serve the community in some way, and so I did. And I love being on there. I love the challenge. I love the opportunity. I love the work that we were trying to do. I knew that we were neophytes, that we were beginners, that we were struggling. We didn't really understand everything that was there for us to do, but I knew we were giving it a really good shot at it. But then I also realized that we were changing the group too much, too frequently. To have a new bunch coming in every 2.5 years was just like difficult to really hold on to creating a foundation. But I stayed, and I feel I participated well. I was being true to what I had to offer. But I also realized there was a time when it was time for me to go, you know? And I kind of felt like it, what's that song? When you stay too long at the fair, you know? I feel I was staying too long at the fair, that I had overstayed the time when I could be useful. And there were other places where I needed to focus on. So I walked away feeling very good about it. I had no agendas, just that it was time for others to be in that spot. So now. You're muted.
Unmute, okay. Thank you. So you served quite a while on the Siri Singh Sahib Corporation board. You're one of the original members.
Yes, good. Amrit Singh and I were both original members on the board, and yeah. And I think Amrit Singh came on soon after that to replace someone, but yeah, we've been on there for a while. Yeah.
When did that start?
It started after the lawsuit. I think it was in 2012.
Right.
2012, I think it started. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
And our time was we could stay on for 5 years, but every 2.5 years, a group would rotate off and a group would be voted on.
Right.
So it would have been 10 years if I really stayed on for the full second term, which I had planned to do. Yeah.
The terms are 5 years.
Yeah, 5-year terms, right?
Wow.
With half the group being up for re-election every 2.5 years.
Gurama, would you like to talk about the early years of the corporation, your service?
You know, I really enjoyed it. It was fun because I really enjoyed working with the people. You know, these were all people that have been around for a long time, and to me it was kind of like tantric. Every time we have a meeting is, you know, you really have to focus and concentrate and try to, you know, elevate. And it was a great, you know, it really was like a tantric experience, trying to just you know, do group consciousness with 15 people, all with different viewpoints and histories and lenses into issues. You know, I really did enjoy it. I enjoyed it, honestly, I enjoyed it up to the point where, you know, these accusations came out and, you know, the group kind of went like this. And that's when it was too much for me. I couldn't deal with it.
Amrit Singh, how long were you on the board? Do you have any board stories?
November 2012 was when I think that's the initial board they call it, and then it started then. And then in June of 2013, Shanti left. And then that's when I was this, you know, what did I say? I was the number one loser, so I got to be on the on next.
I don't get the humor of that. What's that?
Well, there's a list of people, and you have a numerical, how many votes you got, and I was next in line, so I was the top loser, so I got to replace Chanting. I'm good at that kind of thing. I'm always been involved. Every single entity of administration and organization that we've had here in Espanola, I've been involved in it from, when I moved here in 1980. It's just something. And also in the Boston ashram, I was involved in administrative councils and all that stuff. It's just something I can do. The Siri Singh Sahib Corp, because of its structure, which I don't believe it's the right structure personally to have that many people, because it's not responsive enough to the the ongoing situations that need to be monitored and adjudicated. I think in the last year when they were doing this stuff with the allegations, we didn't talk about the nonprofits, financial statement. We didn't do anything for that whole year. We just spent all the time, reacting to the problems that were presented to us. So it ends up, because it's so slow, ponderous, but it doesn't mean it's not right. It just means that it's not really a legislative entity. It's more a reflective body that looks at stuff and then tries to do some kind of executive action with it. There's stuff that needs to be done on a regular basis that didn't get done. Appointing people, reviewing their performance on the boards, replacing people when their time is up. We didn't look at anything, and that had happened the year before with another issue that we were dealing with. It just totally taken all its time, because part of it is that the dynamic of the board is that it was split philosophically, like right down the middle. So in order to go forward with anything, you need to have some kind of majority, and it was often that we couldn't get a majority on issues, and that became very problematic. It's still problematic. I know Sri Vishnu jumped on board, and he's going to butt his head there because he doesn't have the support for his minority position. So it's politics on that level, and it's I don't know how it serves us in the long run, but it seems like there'd be a better way to do it. I don't know what that is, but I know that we neglect a lot of the stuff that needs to be monitored with this big of an organization, because you're discussing something and you can't come to a resolution with that discussion. I left because I wouldn't sign that thing that they had that supported the AOB report. I read the report, and it's not my experience with the Siri Singh Sahib. I couldn't just say, yeah, okay, maybe not. I refused to do that. So that was why I resigned. And that wasn't a surprise to anybody. I had been saying for months that I'm not going to sign this thing. If you guys come up and say that, the Siri Singh Sahib, basically my position is, what they're really saying is the Siri Singh Sahib's a lecherous scumbag. So if you want to say that, I'm not going to participate in that. You can couch it however you want, but you can look at the allegations and say that's the actions of a lecher. And I spent a lot of time with the Siri Singh Sahib and never saw any inkling of that kind of behavior from him. I mean, I'm sure all of you have been around people that are like kind of stuck in their second chakra, and they give off vibes. They do. They're in a room and you see their eyes moving, and you know where they're going. When I was younger, I was in that space. And the Siri Singhs have never had that kind of energy. So I really challenged the whole process that we involved ourselves in, that we didn't support the Siri Singh Sahib's honor and dignity and grace, because he always supported ours. He never let us down in that way. I have a couple little stories. Like you said, we have 3 hours. One time I was doing security. I was on a security team for a long time, and we were up at the Solstice site, and we're getting ready to leave. It was I think there was a children's program at the end of children's camp. So we're getting ready to leave, and I was just driving my pickup truck as the backup security thing. So he says to the staff, he says, "I'm going with Amrit." And they said, "Well, no, sir, you need this." And he said, "Shut up, I'm going with Amrit." And it never did that. He never just rode with somebody and, alone. He always had a staff member there and the whole thing. And my truck wasn't very attractive. It was just an old work truck, so we're bumping down the Solstice Road. So I had an opportunity to ask him something that I had wondered about. And we had, my nieces and different youth that were just having a tremendous turmoil with their lives and with the teen years and, drug abuse and all sorts of things that were going on. And I said, "Sir, did you ever imagine that this would go in this direction, that this, that our kids would be so conflicted and have difficulty with, with adjusting to being Sikhs and being in America?" And he said, "Yeah, I did." He said, because kids, they kind of get ideas and they look at stuff and then they have to decide what they're going to do. So I kind of understood that a lot of them would be questioning and challenging, and that would be okay. He said, "But what I never imagined was that somebody who had put in 20 years of hard work, the yoga, the meditation, the seva, somebody that put in that work would just drop it all and leave." He said, "I never imagined that Westerners, I think he said, that Westerners were that limited and that stupid that they could get to a point where all they had to do was just relax and, relax and rejoice, and they'd be carried through, that they'd throw all that away and then try to start something else." Why go?
Just say something about the Siri Singh Sahib Corp in terms of my perspective. The thing that I found frustrating for me was I felt as a leadership body that we should be representing that entire community. And I felt that we were really focusing on just one part of that community. But everyone was suffering, everyone was in pain. And we were not looking at them all. We were not overseeing them as a parent body. We were only responding to one portion of that. And I felt that was not something that was healthy for our community. And my prayer is that it would change and that there'd be a wake-up call and people would see that. But that was my direct frustration. Without trying to take a side or accuse or whatever, that I was not going there at that point. I just wanted to say, these are all our children. These are all our people. We are the leader of all of them. And they all need to know that they matter to us as a leading body. They all need to feel that our support for them as a leading body. Our job is to pull our family together and keep our family whole and recognizing and supporting each other, no matter what perspective we were taking, and that was, I was just not in the right time for that. I hope it'll happen. I think it probably will. Maybe it's already happening. I'm just not in contact or involved to know, but I really feel, I know you reached out a lot, Gafata Singh, to get to be heard, and I felt that was not responded to in a way that I felt it could have been. So anyway, I think part of the bifurcation that we have experienced in these months is partly due to that. But I also feel that there's a chance that can be healed, and I'm holding out hope for that. But I think that we need to see God in all, and find a way that we can forklift each other. Right now we're the teachers of each other. We need to forklift each other. We need to find a way that we can find a place to be neutral enough that everyone can feel safe with us as a leadership body. And I hold that as a human, as a minister, as a Mukhia Saiba, as whatever. So I still hold out the prayer that that will be a growth that we will see, maybe sooner than later. Maybe we're all learning from this. I think the shock of this situation just sent us into like little tailspins, and we were not able as a leadership body, I feel, to harness that at that time. So now.
Vaheguru. There's been, someone's asking about the split that Amrit Singh spoke about, you spoke about as well. Did that exist, a kind of a split before the OB report and on this recent fiasco, or are we just talking about a split to do with that?
It really is, you get that many people together and you're going to have differing opinions. It's just the nature of human interaction. We basically had disagreements on, it wouldn't matter what you were talking about, you'd have a split of differing opinions. Some people were freaked out by that. They said, well, we know we need to get together and we need to have, some workshop and try to come up with a consensus thing. And I realized that it was a good thing. It's dynamic tension. It creates the opposition and the negative mind to the positive mind and vice versa, that you're looking at every aspect of any situation in depth, because you're being probed to go beyond just what your initial opinion is about it, to go to the depth of what you really think is the best. And I think we made a lot of good decisions over the years. I'm not saying we didn't do anything. The problem for me is because it was so slow, there were a lot of other decisions that needed to be done we never got to, and they just languish and go on and don't really ever get dealt with. I think there's just some systemic problems with the nonprofits that needed to be worked on, and they needed to be prodded and developed. And now we see what 3HO has manifested, and I think part of that's the problem with the Siri Singh Sahib Corporation, that they didn't ever really delve into their management and their philosophy and monitor them and push them in the direction they needed to go, because I think they're way off base. But it's dynamic tension. So it's going to be there no matter who the people are. You're going to have that, because if you had groupthink, it wouldn't really work either.
I'm not mistaken, I think that when the Siri Singh Sahib set up the Siri Singh Sahib Corp, it was for an appointed group of people who were to be on there for almost a lifetime type situation. I think because of the UI and how they terrorized us, in a sense, that there was an intention not to set ourselves up to be that again. So the idea of making it elective, which means that the people get a chance to choose, giving it a chance for that 2.5 years, every 2.5 years, to add a new group in or whatever, was part of that process. But I think, and I'm agreeing with Amrit Singh, I think that that didn't give us a chance in the beginning to actually, from my perspective, to actually really merge. We didn't have enough time to actually become that before there was a new group coming in. And then getting adjusted to that, we didn't have time. So my whole feeling was, oh, if we could have just been this initial board for 2 years, 2 years, give us a chance to really figure things out, understand what's going on, experience the dynamics, and then make some other decisions about how fast we should switch people in and out, but that was not something that had been agreed upon early on. And there was some very, strong need to just stay with what had been agreed upon. But that was how I personally saw it, that we didn't have time, because they say that a group like the Khalsa Council, and I was the original Khalsa Council member, we didn't change anybody on that Khalsa Council very much. The first few of us that were on there, I guess maybe a year later, we added another 6 or 7 people, and he added a few here and there, but it didn't change the whole Khalsa Council to that extent. Now you're off, now you're on, and I think that in a similar way, if we could have had a little bit of a different way of what do they say, first you form, storm and then norm, you know, that might have been a little helpful. But this is what is it? Hindsight is 2020 vision. You know, we don't know what the guru had in store. So I'm just saying this is probably exactly what we needed. And we're just having to go through exactly what we have to go through in order to figure out who we are individually and as a group and how to manage these things. And after having watched that documentary about the social dilemma, you know, and realizing how things have changed so much that they are impacting our organization. And there's a lot to learn how to navigate through that.
Which documentary?
It's called The Social Dilemma.
The Social Dilemma.
It's about the internet, you know, because the thing that I feel was really fueled a lot of our energy around the allegations had to do with the internet and the intention of it and how it is used and effect it has and how it is trained to be used and how it's trained to have that effect, not because it cares about the people, but because it cares about the income that the people's presence brings forth to the owners of those platforms. I think you call them platforms.
Yeah.
I don't watch. I'm not good at internet stuff, so I'm learning.
It's the new economy. It's the attention economy, right? That's what they call it. Yeah. And you know, something lurid stuff. You know, it doesn't have to be nice, but lurid stuff does attract attention.
Yeah.
Graham, do you have any?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm really kind of a student of organizations, you know, and proper structures on how to do it correctly and efficiently. There's definitely, you know, there's a whole science around that, and there are right ways to, you know, do the mechanics of managing organizations. Although what I've come to believe, you know, after, you know, dealing in leadership organizations for 50 years is the structure is really second. It's really the consciousness of the people that make it, or you know, you can have super conscious people in a horrible structure and it'll work. You can have, you know, egotistical people in a perfect structure and it won't work. So, you know, to me, you know, and structures are easy. You know, you can write them down on a piece of paper and diagram them, and the consciousness is not. You know, it's ephemeral. You know, what is it? You know, and I guess it's kind of like, you know, you see it, or you know it when you see it, and it has a lot to do with, you know, and usually when you see it, it's not somebody who's trying to make, you know, trying to push an agenda. You know, it's somebody who, you know, I mean, the Siri Singh Sahib, you know, he, you know, he would have multiple points of view in the same conversation, and it was one thing I could never understand, you know, 100% about him, because he was moving, you know, in the world of the energy, not in the world of mechanics. You know, it didn't really matter what happened. What mattered was what happened was elevated. And I'll give you an example. We were sitting in an airport, and, you know, like a lot of times waiting for airplanes and stuff with him, you'd just be sitting around talking, and he was sitting over on the side, and I was talking to a group of people, and it was a really elevated, you know, great conversation. And I was about to say something, and I felt my crown chakra kind of open up. You know, I mean, everybody has this experience sometimes, but it was, you know, I was clearly, from my own perspective, I was saying it from a place of elevation, and I got 2 words out, and he looked at me and goes, "That's right." And I didn't even finish the sentence. And he told me, and what a learning experience that was. And what it made me realize was, you know, the words don't matter. The consciousness is what matters, you know. And, you know, he can see auras, you know, who knows what he saw, but he saw that, you know, that was how it was being said. And he knew before it was said that it was right. so, you know, to me, that's leadership is not, it's not what you say. It's, I mean, it sounds kind of stupid, but you know, it's not what you say, it's where you're coming from when you say it. And I think, you know, that's the dynamic that we have to put together for, you know, for an Aquarian leadership structure. It's not about the structure so much. It's about, you know, the learning to live in your intuition and higher consciousness when you're interacting with each other. And it's not to say it's going to always look pretty, but it will come out with an elevated result. And our, you know, I mean, Siri Singh Sahib Corp was not pretty. I mean, we spent hours and hours and hours, you know, arguing, and, you know, to the point where we could say what somebody was going to say before they said it. You know, I mean, it was like we knew each other that well. And I will just say, because you know, there were some comments in here about, you know, what happened with the olive branch thing. My personal feeling is the olive branch was a flawed investigation. In fact, it wasn't an investigation at all on any professional norms, and should not be used for any conclusions about Yogi Bhajan or what he did. And that was really kind of my split with the Siri Singh Sahib Corp is, you know, we were moving on a path of, you know, accepting it, you know, broadcloth. And my feeling was, no, you know, it's, you really have to do a proper job to really understand and get to the truth. And we didn't do that. That's, you know, and by that time the train was on the horizon and I was 2 stations back. And that's why it didn't make any sense to me to keep going.
You know, he talked about reading auras one time. We were over here at the pool, the ranch pool, and he had a group of students of one of an old friend of his, teacher in Chicago, and they were touring around, and they came here and we were having lunch. So he's kind of talking, and then at one point the kind of leader of this group of students says, "Can you read my aura?" And the Siri Singh Sahib says, and then the Siri Singh didn't say anything, and then about a minute or two later he says, "When did you want me to read your aura? When you asked the question, or right now?" You see, because your aura is 40,000 separate impulses that are changing every instant. It's not like a static thing where, yeah, you're going to have a map of your aura and we're going to tell you what it is. It changes every time your thought changes. There was an experience, I love what Amrit said about, you know, him knowing ahead. This was something that, trying to explain to the olive branch who this person was that they're, you know, investigating. One time in Vancouver, I'm on security, and we go to this guy's apartment, and this is in the Khalistan era, you know, when there were heavy energy around this and being a Sikh and who did you support and who didn't you support. So this guy that they wanted Siri Singh Sahib to go see because he had something he wanted to show him, he had been in prison, and he was a heavy duty guy. He had been in prison because his daughter had a boyfriend, and he put explosive serving them tea, put explosive in the teapot and kind of injured them. That's how crazy this guy was. But he was a scholar, and in prison he had written this 8-volume set of Sikh stuff, you know, basically philosophical ramblings and musings and different things. So the Siri Singh Sahib agrees to see this guy, and he sits down in his apartment, and the 8 volumes are, guy pulls them out, sets them on the coffee table, the 8 volumes of his treatise, this knowledge that he had put forward to everybody. So the Siri Singh Sahib says, "I want you to open volume 2 and turn to page 89 and read me the 3rd paragraph." So the guy, and the Siri Singh Sahib had never seen this thing. So the guy does, he opens it up, he reads it, and he says, "And this is the flaw of this whole set that you wrote. This line that you wrote about Gurnanak is why this is all just not a valuable treatise. This is just flawed from this point on. And to have that kind of, you know, understanding. Did you read in the guy's aura? Did he, you know, where did he pull that from? That kind of stuff was always amazing to me. But it was not unusual for him to do things like that. You know, and people say, oh, brainwashing, you know, and this. I love to have my brain washed by the Siri Singh Sahib. That was great. But he one time said, he's sitting in the living room of the ranch, and he said, look, you guys think that this talking is something. And this goes to Guru Amrit's point. It's all on a level. For him, it was all, who am I talking to and what do I need to have them get to in order for this to be a successful interaction? He said, you come in through the kitchen, you get to this door, and then I yell at you, I scream at you. And he said, in that moment, when you are reacting to me, because he said, there is nobody whose ego doesn't react when they're attacked. Nobody. He said, in that moment, when you go to that ego space, you have no defense against me. He said, I can go in then and I can adjust you like a chiropractor would just. He's adjusting your psyche. It takes a split second. He said, then you come and you sit down, you talk for 2 hours, we have cookies. You think that's what the process was. Somehow that the talking was achieving something. He said, I fixed you when you came in. It's all done, but you would never understand that. You probably wouldn't allow it. You wouldn't like it. But that's how it is, because you're dealing with the spirit, and you're dealing with energies that most of us don't ever even have any understanding of. We're going through life in the mundane and the ordinary, and we don't get to that depth of understanding and spirit. Guru Amrit saying, how do you bring that kind of consciousness to a group of people that they can make decisions? What I always didn't like about the Siri Singh Sahib Corp is that they, right from the beginning, Krishna mentioned it, we had a fear of what happened with the UI board. We had fear. So a lot of the decision making is fear-based. Oh, this is going to happen to us. You know, when did we ever get to the point of projective intuition that we would actually try to go beyond reacting to situations that are presented to us and create something for the future? We never get there. They've gone backwards, reacting to things and keep reacting to things. And now you're going to be reacting to lawsuits for years, different things, you know. So how do you make that jump? I don't know. I just try to, you know, drag my sorry self to Gurdwara every morning.
I'll tell you, if we knew,
pray that Guru Ramdas covers me for the day.
If we knew, we wouldn't have to keep reincarnating. You know, I'll tell you what happened to me was, you know, around that time that, you know, the whole thing about the allegations was breaking, I got this overwhelming feeling that if you do sadhana, you can get through it. And that was it. It wasn't, you know, I mean, it was pretty simple. And my sadhana improved, you know, 150%. And, you know, God bless whatever energy came into me to make that, you know, make that clear to me. But you know, it's like, we have the tools. The Siri Singh Sahib gave us the tools. And he warned us that this was coming. You know, he said, it's going to be bad, and it's going to be really bad. And, you know, you guys need to be ready. I'm giving you the tools to be ready. You know, just do it. Pretty simple, actually, you know.
Really simple. I totally agree with you, Guru Amrit. I mean, to me, that's what I feel the message was. Here you are. Here's your test. You have so many kriyas and meditations and mantras that work, you know, but you have to really, we have to dedicate ourselves to it individually, you know, so that it can manifest through us individually. And when we come together collectively, and that collective consciousness that you spoke about, you know, will be present, will be there among us. We'll figure it out. We won't have to go back and forth and argue and sweat and push and pull for a point of view. we'd be able to pull out, zoom out, and be able to see the whole, the totality of what was happening, and be able to respond to it. But I believe that many in our family don't do a full Aquarian sadhana. You know, we've gotten it to the point where it's comfortable. I'm okay with this. I like that. But I think if we could test ourselves more on the things that we don't like, the things that we find challenging, that we'd rather not do at all, that we will realize that those things can be the very thing, the very mantra, the very meditation, the very kriya, the very exercise that could touch a part of the place in our bodies where something is stuck, you know, and release it so it can be moved and we can get through it. But, you know, again, everyone can choose however they want to do it in that way. And I have no bones about it, but I do agree. And my sadhana has always been strong, but it just keeps getting stronger. My teachings are strong and they keep getting stronger, you know, because I believe totally that it's when you put the body and the mind together and do a kriya and a meditation that functions in a way that's going to open up those places where the body is hanging on to fear, hanging on to old karma, hanging on to old stories, hanging on to old stuff, you know, then somehow it doesn't allow the mind to actually free itself completely either. So hopefully we're going to all get this message or a similar message that will help us to do the work. You know, like you said, don't love me, love my teachings, you know, don't honor me, honor my teachings. And I do, I honor his teachings. You know, I've never held him up as a saint or anything like that, you know. Yeah. And people ask me, how can you do what this guy tells you to do? I said, because he works for my boss. God is my boss and he works for my boss. And I believe that whatever I'm getting through him is coming from the divine. So, Waheguru, shut up.
Waheguru, Waheguru. We're going to have a break scheduled for about 7 minutes from now. Amrit Singh, Amrit, you want to just kind of wrap up remarks, and we'll take a little break, and we'll, during the break, read the questions and answers. There's 3 of them, and maybe just have a look at the chat. Also, one of the questions is in Spanish. If you can please translate for us. Thank you. Anybody?
Well, I want to just say I'm thanking you for bringing us together. I think our community is ready for these conversations. I hope you have a lot more with more people and different people, because there's a lot to be shared. And I think the more we hear each other, the more, well, for me, the more I hear Amrit Singh and Guru Amrit, I hear them a lot on the Siri Singh Sahib Corporation, but just hearing them again and just hearing their heart and hearing where they're coming from, hearing what's moving them, hearing where the Guru sits inside of them and feeling the frequency of that, I find to be so healing and so nurturing for me. So I'm going to say thanks to that for you.
And now they're in Spanish.
Nice.
and French and German, you know.
I'm just saying we're doing Spanish translation at this moment, right? But people can translate for sure, and it's being recorded, so then it can be translated into Swahili, whatever.
Yes.
All true. All true.
Cool.
Can I just tell a quick story?
Sure.
So we were, Yogi Bhajan would participate in these holy man jams. And I maybe 5 or 6 in his lifetime. And one of them was in the Poconos in Pennsylvania. I went with him, and it was an interesting experience. But, and there's a lot of stories around that. But the thing that kind of sticks with me was at the very end. And I'm saying this because it's about us as a group and melding into a consciousness as a group instead of just as individuals. The very end, there was a ceremony with the American Indians, and it was out on the lawn in the middle of this big meeting area, and everybody was kind of around this circle, and the American Indians were doing the I pray to the north, I pray to the south, I pray to the east, pray to the west, and about 15 minutes into this, the Siri Singh Sahib raises up his hand and he goes, stop. Hold on, and he walks into the middle of it and he says, okay, everybody take 5 steps forward. And so the circle closes a little bit, and he says, 5 more, 5 more, 5 more, until, you know, we're all this tight little ball in the middle. And then he says, 5 more. And we are jammed in. My arms are like, you know, plastered to my side, and I cannot move. And then he says, start chanting. And he starts chanting, and he's in the middle of the whole thing, and he starts chanting. And so all of us start, you know, we're all, you know, trying to figure out the words, and finally, slowly we get it, and the energy builds and builds. And suddenly it's like this whole group is like just, you know, elevated to this. I mean, we were all so high and so intense, and it was this huge group consciousness, which only happened because of our proximity, you know, because we were there together, and we had no agendas other than praising God. And it was, you know, the funny thing was, you know, there were a lot of lectures, and there was all sorts of stuff around these, you know, holy man jams, but that was the real experience. I mean, it was at the very end. And it was really the really visceral, you know, non-conceptual experience that everybody had. And it was wonderful. You know, the fact that he, you know, he made that happen, made it worth it for everybody. And I'm just saying that because, you know, it's a, you know, the Guru says, you know, it's the, you know, find the Nam in the company of the holy. It's difficult to do it by yourself.
Wow, you guys are really, really together. Very close.
Yeah,
Like.
yeah. It was funny because at the end, everybody started chanting, but nobody moved. People didn't want to go anywhere, you know. It was like, you know, I don't want to stop this. You know, it was funny.
That was an amazing story. I almost feel like I was there.
Yeah.
Because how he has been able to walk in and change the temperature and the dynamics of a place and make it really more real and more powerful. You know, I remember he used to like to cook. And one day he decided to walk into the kitchen and cook. And that meant that everyone who was around would get busy at a station so we could just manage whatever he was needing, because he would just say, give me this, give me that, give me this, give me that, you know. And so I stationed myself near the spice cabinet, and I remember him saying, give me something green, give me something green. So I'm saying, okay, oregano, rosemary, green, 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 green. You know? And I learned in that instant that it's not about the what, it's about the essence of it. I just gave him something green, and he was happy. You know? And sometimes we get so persnickety about the specific thing that we really don't remember that what's important is the essence of it. What was important to what he was cooking was the green energy, not the flavor of whatever the green energy was giving, you know. And so I think that I've seen him do that so often, as you said, certainly in those early days, Amrit Singh, good Amrit Singh. So it was lovely just to remember who he was and what he did and what he gave. So now.
He wasn't limited to the student population. I mean, he did this with governors. He did it, you know, one time Bill Clinton came through Albuquerque, and they met at the airport, and he had a private meeting with him, and he had been in some, you know, little dust up over something he had said. So Yogi Ji told him, look, this is what you have to say now, and just this is exactly what you have to say, not the essence of it. You say these words, and you say them for the next 4 or 5 days every time you're asked about this. Basically, he gave him a nod, you know, phrase to repeat, and the whole thing just went away. I mean, and I saw him with the governors and different things where he would counsel these guys and elevate, like Krishna saying, just elevate the whole process to beyond just what people are stuck in. It was amazing to watch.
Yeah. Okay, we'll take a little break. Well, the break is on. The sound system works. I'm going to play. I've called this series All Around the World. So there's a song. Some of you might remember. Guru Das Singh from Puerto Rico did the song. It's in English, but we can translate if you want to translate. And I'll play that. It's about a 5-minute song, and then we'll come back. How's that?
younger, ones of the good. It's like they pray and we're all around the world. All around the world. Word of the good used to be heard all around. Brothers and sisters all around the world, singing together, one voice to be heard, and our soul has awakened, and God is inside. We grow each morning, a new race starts all around the world. All around the world, singing together, a voice to be heard all around the world. Golden temple in air.
So not dramatic. It's the music dead. Music died. No, this is the same device that the music was on. So we're talking on the phone now that the music died. Anyway, never mind. No. Yeah. No. We finished early before I can bring this. If I can technically figure out how to do it, I can bring this part. No. We'll just go till we're done, and just put on your own brakes. Check yourself. If you find your mind going into the dirty stuff, the unproductive stuff, and hopefully everybody can do that. And we won't go there, and I'll kick around 10. Are we done? So no, the perfect.
Your volume is not muted.
You heard the sound of the song? Were you able to translate the song? Somebody asked, they came late and they wonder if this is going to be recorded. The video is being recorded. All of our webinars have been recorded. Only thing that won't be recorded is the translation. So if you're a Spanish speaker and you really appreciate the translation and you need the translation, you can record that yourself independently and just keep that. Okay, how is everything going to continue? We'll wait for our presenters to come. Oh, boom. Yeah, we've said we'll go for a maximum of 3 hours. This is a series now of webinars, and we haven't always gone to full time. This is not an investigation into the olive branch report. I just wanted to bring you three on to just talk about your story, and you've been very generous in telling some of that story and your personal story, how you came to this into this form, into this spirit, and also a bit of your time on the Siri Singh Sahib Corporation, which is way out of my experience. All I know is what you tell me about it, and you're deciding to retire from that, and you're thinking around that. I presume neither of you, it's just two of you right now, have any regrets about retiring from the board? Any regrets? Nope. What are you doing now? Amrit Singh, what are you doing now that you would otherwise be investing into the board? What are you doing instead with that?
You know, that's interesting. So for 7+ years, you have a few, like usually it was at least 2 meetings a week, sometimes 3, and sometimes more, sometimes meetings in the morning also. So in order to stay awake for 2.5, 3 hours in the night, and it was really late for the people on the East Coast, but here in, you know, Denver time and Mountain time, if I ate anything heavy, then there was no chance of being able to stay conscious throughout that meeting. So I would, you know, finish work, get done what I have to do, and I would grab like something light, like a fruit shake or something, and then I'd go to the meeting. So now that I'm not doing that, now that I have time, and I'm a great cook, and I, you know, I love to cook. I'm doing a lot of culinary creation and discovery, so I'm overeating. That's one of the results of this thing. The other thing is that the process, the kind of overriding tension and discouraging condition of the Siri Singh Sahib kind of crushed my art work. I haven't done anything in a couple of years, so I'm starting to I have some vacation time coming up in the end of November, and I'm starting to plan my next art project, because that's been on hold for a couple of years with all this tense stuff we've been dealing with. So
who knew you were an artist? Talk to us about your art a little bit.
I've sculpted the 10 Sikh Gurus in bronze. I've sculpted the Siri Singh Sahib. I have one piece that's it's the chakras, the 7 heads of the Siri Singh Sahib with different expressions in one piece, about 4 feet tall. I've painted probably 100+ paintings. I've painted 54 portraits of Yogi Ji. Most of them are around, some in Europe, some other places. Yeah, and I started that under his tutelage, basically. Sitting in the ranch one day, and he's talk, you're Christian knows, you'd be there for hours, like Graham was saying, you're just kind of sitting, you're waiting for something, but he's might be dealing with somebody, he might be on the phone, or whatever, he was there. And he kept coming back to cottage industries. And, we're here in Espanola, and it's kind of a, poor place financially. And he's saying, if you develop this stuff, but he would do, then he'd talk to somebody and come back. He kept coming back to this theme. And the whole time I'm sitting there, I'm looking at this piece, this bronze piece that he had bought at the flea market. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know really anything about bronze. I don't know how to do that. But if I had done that thing that's on the table, it would be better. I would have made it better. And that was the spark that started me. I decided, not being a shy person and not really liking the educational process as much, I just decided to learn about it. And my first piece, Why Should I Start, was something small. I started with Guru Gobind Singh. So that was my first sculpture.
There's been a question, where can we see your art? I'd like to know too.
I don't have a website. I had a website, and then the Kirtan Jetta folks decided that it was evil, and presenting images of the gurus was not something that should be done. And I was threatened with excommunication by the SGPC, which was fine with me. I didn't really care. One time in class, the Siri Singh Sahib said, "What? He's made me stand up." He said, "You're doing this." I said, "I've already been excommunicated once, or why did I go for two?" He thought that was somewhat humorous. I was a Catholic, and similar to Krishna, I had a deep religious calling, and my, I had an interesting thing one time. She was saying, her search was, how do you do? And I had this long session of contemplation, meditation. I came back to the original line in the first catechism that you get as a young Catholic student. It says, what is the purpose of life? And the purpose of life in the catechism is to know, love, and serve God. And I came back to that thing as the essence of what life is. And it's true. It's not, that's a universal truth. So anyway.
Waheguru. So the art goes on, it's just not online.
It isn't. I have, the pieces are displayed here. I gave one of each piece that I did to the Siri Singh Sahib. So in the dome, in the windows of the dome, there's one of each one of my sculptures, or some of them. And the paintings are kind of all over the place. I have a few in my studio in Espanola.
It's a job for somebody to catalog your work.
It would be interesting. I wrote a thing one time I think it was for the Sikh Dharma, or the minister's newsletter. And it basically said, because I won an art fair when I was 5 years old. But as a young, Boston kid, Irish kid, you don't get any praise or recognition for being sensitive. You're macho. You're in the macho environment of sports and all that stuff. And I'm athletic, and I'm large. I can knock you down. I get a lot of praise for that. But I didn't get any praise for seeing how the blue of the sky faded into the sunset. You don't get that. So it wasn't until that time I actually did a little bit in college, but not a lot. It wasn't until that time with the Siri Singh Sahib that I decided to pursue that vigorously, and it's very rewarding. And the other thing I realized, because part of the art community had a reputation as flighty and unreliable. Oh, they're artistic, this thing, like they're different because they have a sensitivity in that way. And I really didn't relate to that at all. I'm a working person. I work every day. I start early and I go late, and I just work. And there was this gentleman here close to Espanola, we were doing, as the builders, we were building him this huge garage. He had a couple of Lincolns, he had motorcycles, he had all this stuff, and he was an artist. So we were over there for months building this place. And one time during the process, he had gone to Dallas to be honored by the Dallas, whatever it was. And they gave him the keys to the city, and he came back. And I had given him an invoice on Friday for like, $19,000, right? He came back on Monday and he paid me in $100 bills. This guy who went, he did beautiful work, Joseph. And but every day he came out at the same time. He came out at 7:30. He went into this little cafe in Espanola for exactly 30 minutes. He had his breakfast. He went into his studio. He worked till 12:30. He went to lunch for half an hour. He came back and he worked till the end of the day. And I said, I can do that. I can relate to that kind of workman. Like, quote, the guy had been an auto body repairman for 17 years before he got into his art. And I realized that if you brought that kind of, because it is a left brain, right brain thing. There's a point there where you're so kind of out of it. I remember I'd be working, because I'd never relinquished my duties as the Mukhia Jathedar, and I'd be working on a piece, and it's 10 o'clock at night, and the phone rings with some weird thing, and you're kind of like looking at the phone like, what, this is a whole nother thing. So that was part of the process for me, is to learn how to switch back and forth from left brain to right brain quickly without diminishing your actual ability to function on the planet. So I think I've achieved that pretty well. But oil painting is a lot easier than sculpting, because if you don't like the next day what you did, you just paint over it and change it. With a sculpture, you could spend 6 hours working on some little hand, and then when you get back to it, the next time you get back to it, you might not remember what the hell you were doing and have to kind of start over. So anyway, why get it?
Very good. Robert, are you putting on weight?
I didn't say I was putting on weight. I said
Were you asking me if I was putting on weight?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, Amrit Singh not admitting to putting on weight, but it's looking headed that direction.
Maybe a little. Are you asking what have we been doing with all our time now?
Yeah, exactly.
And I will tell you, it was a lot of time. We were going like 2-3 hours a day for 3-4 days a week. Well, I'm a entrepreneur. I have my own business, and it was always a balance trying to balance my time. But I've had, to be honest, I've been working, and trying to go to bed earlier so I can get up for sadhana, because they were very late nights.
So you have more time for your own work.
Yeah.
Okay. Krishna, a change in your schedule?
Big time. But not just since leaving the Siri Singh Sahib Corp, but since the pandemic. I was flying here and flying there a lot, and really enjoying the idea of being in different cultures and hearing different languages, and trying to learn how to be translated, giving translators an easier time to translate me. But I found that my biggest challenge has been trying to understand the technology of Zoom. I have been very proudly and very arrogantly a very dedicated low-tech person. And I find myself now that I'm not traveling and I'm wanting to keep the teachings going, that I've got to figure it out. So I'm getting better at it. I'm doing some regular things online. I think since I left the Siri Singh Sahib Corp, I've had a chance to relax a little bit. Because as Amrit Singh was saying, I mean, this year has been just so many meetings, and being so concerned and interested in what we were doing and how we were doing it and what we were saying, what we were feeling. I was trying to attend as many of those meetings as I could. So just once that ended, I ended up stepping away, of course, and having a little more evening time to think about other things, mostly about how I can best present the teachings, how I can best continue teaching the teachings as authentically as I've always taught them, and what else can I bring in to help people across that bridge if it's in their destiny to cross that bridge, and just really to stay with the power of the teachings and honor the teacher, and to go through the teachings and to understand what our basic philosophy is. What is the foundational philosophy on which each of us has to find a way that we can use it as a way of testing everything that we believe and think and feel. And I'm clear about mine. I've been clear about mine, and I've been really feeling that a way to try to help others find that or to look at that for themselves has been an interesting opportunity, creative opportunity. Not having been a real online person, there's a lot of ways in which you present and talk and all that stuff, which I'm not very good at, but I'm making an effort to learn how to do it. I find myself not long after I left the Siri Singh Sahib Corp, I had a fall, and that fall took out my knee, and so I've been learning how to just manage being a little gimp, for a while. But it feels as though that the knee, I understand, is a part of the body that talks about direction and changing direction. So I'm sitting here meditating and saying, okay, I got it. I'm supposed to change direction in some way, and I'm open to understanding what that is. I'm actually enjoying it. It was easier than I thought. It was easier than I thought. I thought I would be remorseful. I thought I would be sad. I thought I would be, depressed about not having that in my life after having it in my life for so many years. But it was really very easy. And I think it was because it was right on time, and it was the next phase of my life was to look to other things and to look at other ways that I can help to spread the teachings and the work that I'm doing in that. So one of them has to do with me building up the board for Yoga for Youth and inviting more talent on the board and finding ways to offer our trainings online. Because I think that whatever is going on now with COVID is not going to go away. The online things that are in place now are not going to just suddenly disappear. And so I feel that it's important for me to learn it well and to try to make sure that my organizations are also being a little more tech savvy about things. So, but that's it. I'm here in LA, so we have really great weather, and so being outside and sitting on my deck and that sort of thing has been lovely. And allow myself to just let go. I realize I've held a lot of hope, of heart, of feeling, and just wanting to clear myself so that I can speak clearly to what my belief is without compromising, but also without letting anyone down, It's like just need to keep us all held in some way. And that doesn't mean catering to anyone that has a belief that I don't believe in, but it means honoring that human being inside of that person, the spirit inside that person, and what it is in them that makes them unique and special. And I feel that so deeply that it takes me sometimes a little while to figure out how to articulate it. But I'm okay.
Boy, good. And we're glad you're okay. The knee's coming along?
Coming along,
Good. Good.
Yeah, it's an adventure. I've never had anything like this happen before. So this is an adventure. It's humbling. But it also lets me know there's still a lot of things that I can do to help heal myself.
And we're glad you are. And you're doing classes and training, I presume, still? Teacher training?
I'm still online doing my trainings, and I'm looking to expand some of that. I keep getting ideas of things that I want to share more with the people. There's so much richness in our technology, so much richness in it, and so much richness in our lifestyle. And to bring it down home where people can engage I'm very appreciative of Black Lives Matter having awakened itself again. You know, it's happened many, many times. This time, because the Europeans were also in it, it's like, whoa, maybe this will be a little more lasting.
And the
the-
Brazilians.
so,
I was just reading the Brazilians are on board too.
yes, yes, they are. They're all over South America, and even in China and places there was. But I think it's important that we realize that our culture has a history and has a pattern, and then what's happening in our small 3HO culture is really a kind of an example of what's happening in our larger culture. The difference for me is that we are focused on developing ourselves spiritually, but all the influences that we have from the larger culture are still there. And the reactions are still there. The fears are still there. The patterns are still there. And I see that from the perspective of being a Black person, but I also see it from just being a human being. And I'm seeing that we have the opportunity to be a leader in this process of changing and shifting our dynamics and our style and our reactions in such a way that it can be a model for the rest of the country and the world, you know. And if we can act but not react quite so much, you know, because we are doing our sadhana, we are doing our practice, we are living this lifestyle, I think we can be a model of that in some way. And it doesn't mean everyone has to be that, but I'm still holding in my brain the community, which seems so important to the Siri Singh Sahib also, that our community was important, that we stay together, we support each other, we hang in there, you know, and we keep moving forward in a way that can uplift all, you know. And I sense from all that's going on around the politics and around the election and all that stuff, I don't think we're immune from that. I do think we have words to speak into that. We have wisdom to speak into that. We have knowledge to speak into that. And that to find a way to do that so that it doesn't demean anyone or or not respect everyone's perspective and where they are and who they are and how they are, because we respect everybody no matter what. That there's still something that we can begin to plant seeds of wisdom, just as the Siri Singh Sahib planted in us. He planted seeds of wisdom that some things he said to me, it took me 2 years to figure it out. But I knew because he gave it to me, it was my job to figure it out. And I didn't ask him a lot. I didn't go through any questions with him about, well, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by that? I just sat with it. And eventually I figured it out, you know. And I think in a sense, I still see us as a community that has all this wisdom, all this clarity, all this experience. And I hope that there's more ways that we find to inoculate the greater society with some of it in ways that they can hear it as a business person, as an artist, as a spiritual person, as a teacher, as a lecturer, as a bum on the street. Who cares, you know? We don't care. We're just here to, as he said, create teachers, you know? And so I'm looking for more ways to find that I can creatively teach.
Waheguru. Yeah, you've carried a lot. One little story we didn't tell that some people might not know is that there's been a prohibition. I mean, Amrit Singh knows about prohibitions and things that can emanate out of Amritsar because of their particular point of view. But there's also a long tradition that women don't sing in the Golden Temple. And so you went along for a yatra, just went along, and you were put center stage and they'll sing. And a beautiful story, because apparently I understand that somebody from the SGPC, you know, the mind police over there, was there, and they were just about to stand up and put an end to the thing. But then one of these big, handsome youngs showed up with, you know, fully armed, just as you were about to start. And the SGPC functionary looked up and considered his options and said, thought he'd better just sit and let you sing. And you made history that day. I think it was the birthday of Guru Ram Das.
Yeah, I didn't remember all of that, but I do know that when Bob and the Hall Singh walked in, as I was getting ready to sit down at the harmonium, and the servitor behind the City Granth Sahib was rising up in protest. He took one look at Bob and the Hall Singh and he just eased himself right back down. Because all those sorties is said, and of course, you know, if you've ever met Bob and the Hall Singh, which I met him also again when I was back in India in November, it was so good to see him. Um, that he has such a brilliant presence of a spiritual warrior, because his spirit and his consciousness was so powerful just from his quiet stillness. But you knew that he wasn't playing around. You know, he was serious. And I feel that for me, I want to hold that clarity of where my consciousness is, but also that I'm not playing. I'm serious about these teachings and I want to get them across. But that was amazing. I didn't know. I think soon after that, then I think Ramadas Kaur and those and her Jatha and also played downstairs. I was up in the dome of the Guru Temple, but I could do lots of firsts.
So
Yeah.
Krishna, any chance we could get you to sing for us? My Lover Lord?
Oh, we'll see.
Okay.
You know, it's hard to sing that because, well, it's just hard to sing it.
Yeah, there's a history to that. Yogaji would I think every second summer solstice, he would pull that out and say, Krishna, sing that song. And do it so beautifully. Now you have it recorded, isn't it? There's at least a couple of versions, I think.
There's a version recorded that we're trying to find that same spirit in it again, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It was so funny. It was in 1972, and we were driving up to the solstice, which was in Northern California, and the song just sort of fell out. It just sort of came out of it. I don't know why I'm singing this song about my lover, you know, but it just fell out so fast, and I was playing my guitar. And one day when we got back, it was several months after we got back, and I was in the ashram and on Pruce Road, and the staff was gathering around for some reason, and I was playing that. And they called the Siri Singh Sahib in and said, "Hear Krishna's new song, hear Krishna's new song," you know. And he came and says, "Okay, Krishna, let me hear it." And so I was sitting on the couch and I was playing my guitar and singing. He says, "Okay, put the guitar down, stand up, and now sing it," you know, which was like, okay, but, and I never held the guitar again.
Right.
That is, but I think as he had me sing it, I learned more and more about it. I remember Guru Shabbat Singh was working with me on some stuff that I was going through, and then he sat and listened to that song at solstice one day, sitting in the aisle so I could see him. And in that moment, I really saw that my whole story was there.
Mm-hmm. My goodness. It's not that far removed from the Shabad, Tu Mera Pitta, Tu Hai Mera Mata. Quite similar. You just pulled that out from someplace.
I heard that Shabbat without knowing what the words meant, and it moved me so much. It was at ladies' camp when Ganga and Guru Ramdas Kaur were singing together. And I heard that Shabbat, and Sapita was playing the guitar and someone was on the tablas. And I thought, whoa, it just touched me so deeply. And months later, I learned the words of it.
Mm.
This was like 2 years after I had.
You got to direct. You got to direct. My goodness. My goodness. Another song you're famous for is Walking Up the Mountain. Do you have any story around that?
Yeah, that was, you know, Gurdane Singh and Gurdane Kaur from Texas. Gurdane Singh used to come to the Siri Singh Sahib, or to the Khalsa Council meetings, and he always would write a poem for the Siri Singh Sahib. And we'd hear that poem in the council meetings. When this poem was read, it somehow touched the Siri Singh Sahib in a way, because it had the ancient pattern of a relationship of a student to a teacher, you know, walking up the mountain, asking these questions, and the teacher never really answered them directly, but just kept pushing him forward. And at the end of the Khalsa Council, he told Gurdas, I want you to put this to music and I want Krishna to sing it. I want to have it on my altar tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock. And so Peter Singh, well, first, well, Gurdas wrote it with Gurdane. They got together and wrote the song. And then we got together at St. Peter's and they were teaching it to me. And Gurdas Singh says, I really want to sing on this also, you know. And I said, why not, you know? Why not? He was a little bit hesitant to ask because the order was, you write it, you create it, and Krishna sings it, you know. But when he asked, it seemed like it made so much sense. So we did. And that little recording that was made in St. Peter Singh's home-baked studio on a little cassette tape was given to the Siri Singh Sahib, and it has that has never been re-recorded from then. Never.
It's in our tantric courses now.
All over for years and years and years it is, but it has never been remastered or re-recorded. It is that same. And there's been so many things that he asked us to do, record and then have it on his altar the next morning, you know, before 6 o'clock in the morning. And I never hear from him again, you know. But this one seemed to have had an impact.
I still remember, I think it was 2005 at a tantric course in at Solstice. I still remember you were there and there was a tantric course. That song was playing and all hell was breaking loose. We had thunder, snowballs coming down onto the roof. We had, yeah, it was just like that. It was hot day, but the cold weather blew in and we had these hail coming down. And we just knew who was behind that. I looked at you and we were just all in tears. It was too much. It was just totally amazing. It was like Siri Singh would say, you know, okay, it's been about a year. Physically, I've not been around, but don't kid yourself. I'm here.
Yeah.
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 We could hardly hear each other.
I remember that. And I think of it a lot, you know, what he heard, what he saw, what he felt. We may not know all the places it came from. I will never know all of the places things he said came from. But somehow it was so true. I don't want to hog the space here, but can I tell you one story about my brother?
Tell three.
The brother that I went to the Siri Singh Sahib to ask him where he was. He was an amazing man, but he was always into drugs. He was always into stuff. We never knew if he was going to be safe or not. Well, he showed up back in my life again, and I met him in Boulder when there was a tantric course in Boulder, and he happened to be there, so I could see him. We could sit together and catch up on old times. You know, this was years later, and I tried to get him into the drug program in Tucson because I said they will help you. But he said, "Okay, sis, I'll do it." You know. And so he got to the drug program. I paid his way, got him on a plane, sent him there right away, talked to them every day. They said, Krishna, your brother, he's just climbing out the windows and going, getting a cigarette. He's doing this, he's doing that, you know. And so I said, well, bring him to LA when you come for the tantric course, and I'll have the Siri Singh Sahib talk to him. And so I sat down with the Siri Singh Sahib, you know, in front of him in his chair, and my brother and I were on the floor. And he looked at my brother, and Siri Singh Sahib started to cry. Tears were coming down his eyes. He says, "You're such a wise man. You're such a wise man. You know, you think you can fuck with God so much that he will never abandon you. Is that right?" My brother said. I said, "What?" You know? He said, "You're such a wise man." He said, I can't even talk to you. I can't even talk to you. I've never seen him have that expression with anybody ever. And I thought, this is my brother. You're talking about brother, you know, and he's this, you can see this in my brother, you know. And so my brother became a Sikh and did all that stuff. Could never keep it together. You know, they called him Sinbad when he would go out in the night to get his drugs and stuff, because he would still be dressed as a Sikh, you know. But he finally, he died on Skid Row here in LA. And we said, well, we want to do a memorial for him because he was always very special, wise man. His writings were like, whoa, they'll blow your mind, you know. But we said we'll have his memorial out there on Skid Row because that's where he seemed to feel most comfortable. And so we had lots of chicken and lots of stuff there for people and lots of pictures on this wall. People came by for 3 hours saying, "Your brother changed my life. Your brother changed my life. Your brother changed my life. Your brother changed my life." You know, and we're saying, "Really?" You know, this guy, you know, always in trouble, always, you know, doing stuff, and but he had something in him, and the Siri Singh Sahib saw that. So I said, if he could see that in my brother, he could see that everywhere, you know. And what he saw in me, what he saw in you, what he saw in all of us, what he saw in the politicians, you know, that Amrit Singh was talking about, what he saw in all of us was something that to most of us was hidden because we were attached to behavior. We saw things. We didn't see essence. We saw things. We saw what people did and how they did what they said and how they said. We didn't see more than that, you know? But I think that we have begun to see that. Not that we, and that's me saying that, that's not true. Of course, people see all the things, and I'm not saying that about anybody, but I didn't see it, you know, but I realized when he could see that he could see a lot. And so that was another, you know, clarity about my relationship with him,
Great.
how
Great
I could hold the space. You know?
I had a experience one time. This is about the process that Krishna's talking about. We were working on an addition to the dome over here, and I had designed the construction process so that there was some unskilled stuff that could be done. In other words, Sangha members could help to take it to the next phase because it was just like stacking these foam blocks and stuff. And it was, you know, I had figured out, oh, people can come and help. So Saturday morning, and, you know, I'm expecting a bunch of people to come over and help. Nobody showed up, right? So I'm a little irritated. And you know, I kept working. And then around lunchtime, I said, well, you know, that's it. I'm done for the day, which was not my usual pattern. So my wife and I went to the movies, and we're standing in the, you know, I'm standing with my popcorn, just kind of waiting for the theater to open. Siri Singh Sahib comes in, and he comes over to me. He looks up at me and says, "We are not satisfied." And I kind of know what the heck he's talking about, which was not unusual. In the interaction with the Siri Singh Sahib, he says something, and you go, "Okay, whatever, sir." So, but then, and then it was the end of it. But then the next day I was on duty on security, and I saw him. I said, "Sir, I don't understand what you said. Why are you saying this?" "Look, Amrit, one thing you have to understand. I am just a mirror. That's what a spiritual teacher is, or a mirror of what your consciousness needs to see and relate to. I was just holding a mirror up to you. You were, you know, unsatisfied for whatever reason. I was seriously unsatisfied. I was pissed off." But it was interesting to hear that because it explains a lot of what he would say with you, that you know, it's just like deep, because it's your own self being reflected back at you, which is not a normal thing. Like Krishna says, you're involved in the mundane. You don't go into those realms normally. But then he would come along and hold up that mirror to your psyche, and you would get just a glimpse of what it is you needed to work on.
It had to be a deep longing to just be open and receptive to that. I witnessed so many people who he would approach in similar ways that Amrit Singh is saying, and they would just get irritated and still kind of bummed out about it, you know? So there's this marriage between a student and a teacher is a sacred thing. And even though you might be a student, air quotes, you know, you may not be a student, in which case your relationship would be easily affected or impacted by his style of approaching you, you know, which I thought was also interesting to observe, watching him hammer people and watch them run out of there totally freaked out, and then chasing him down and trying to help them understand what he was saying, you know.
And he used to say that his relationship is personally impersonal,
Mhm.
which, it has so many, layers to it. It's like a spiritual teacher is not your friend, but it's also not your enemy. And it's also your ultimate best friend. And it's also your your worst enemy. It's so layered. But, just from a just a still personal, heartfelt place, it's like, well, at least my relationship, I mean, everybody's is different, but my relationship with him is, I don't want to be his friend. I want to be what he is.
I'm saying ditto to that. I didn't want to be his friend. But I just wanted to be his student. I wanted to just grab, and it's the same thing I think Good Armin is saying in his way. My way of saying it is that I want to just absorb everything in my body, in my mind, that he wanted to give me, pour inside of me, and just pray that I can get at least some portion of that. That would be okay. But yeah, I get that, and sometimes he would be very chummy and friendly, but with me, he never was. He never
Yeah.
was.
If he got really chummy with me, I would get really scared.
Yeah.
That's kind of like, okay, we'll play your game. I'll be, chummy with you, but that's not who he was. That wasn't you using him to his fullest capability. And he would accept that. You don't want to use me as a teacher? Fine. We'll be, social friends. That was never, I would be horrified to be his social friend. I want to walk next to him. I don't want to be talking to him. I just want to walk next to him.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just never needed to be someone that he complimented a lot or that he praised a lot. Though there were those around that he did compliment a lot and he did praise a lot. And that was their relationship. And it didn't mean that they weren't his student also, but I would see that and I'd say, I don't want that. I don't want that. Just hit me hard. Tell me the truth. Let me know it. Let me feel it. And so the staff would just say, "Oh, he speaks to you so differently than he speaks to everybody else," because he would talk to me in statements, not full sentences. And I just recall so many instances where I would just get this headline, da 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 da, and that would be the end of it, and I wouldn't explore it, but I would say, "Okay, that means I got to figure this out," and I appreciated it like that. I really did. There was talk about the impersonal, personal, personally impersonal. That was my experience, and I believe he heard and saw that. That's how I would feel safe. That's how I would know that he is my teacher, because he could. And in school, as in junior high school, in high school, I liked those tough teachers. Nobody else, none of my other friends did, but I liked those tough teachers, because I knew they felt like they could push me and I would be okay.
He's a sculptor. You could see, he could take a big, massive granite and you could see something inside of it, and then he would go to work chiseling to bring out what he could see inside. Many of us could not.
Yeah.
I had an interesting experience one time. We had this guy here who was the head of the ashram. Maybe a lot of you knew him, Wagadu Singh. And he had basically gone off the edge. And unbeknownst to us, who were trying to function here as a community, he had already told the Siri Singh Sahib, I want to leave. And the Siri Singh Sahib said to him, what are you going to do? You got little kids, a wife, you don't have any career, you don't have any, what are you going to do? How are you going to support them? He said, look, here's what you need to do. Just stay, calm down. Your father is not going to live very long, and then you'll have your inheritance, and then you can do what you need to do. So the Siri Singh Sahib knew this, but no one else knew this. So here's this guy, and we're in a meeting over here at the ranch living room for about 3 hours. And he had been lying to people. And we're just basically, I think Tiago was there. Tiago and I are, and we're just in his face. The Siri Singh Sahib's there and Wagaru's there, and we're just going, you're a lying, whatever it is, you're just unbelievable that you can just go on and treat people the way you're treating them, blah, blah, blah. We were just in his face. So that was contentious. It was over about 10 o'clock at night. And I went home. So the minute I walked in the door, the phone rang. And my wife picked it. It was a Siri Singh Sahib. He goes, Amrit, you don't know what I'm talking about, do you? And I said, no, sir, I have no idea. He said, look, Wagaru is Wagaru. The essence of that is his destiny, and that's how you have to think of him. And if you don't think of him in that highest realm and destiny, then that shortchanges you because you're not doing what you need to do. So I'm kind of like the leader of the, those guys left a couple months after that. The whole group of them left. It was 84. And so, but I'm kind of like the leader of the whole rest of the Sangha that's saying, what the hell's going on with these people and why are they doing what they're doing? So then the next time anybody said anything to me about Wagaru, because there were a lot of, bitching and moaning and complaining, I would say, he's the selfless servant of God. People would look at me like, what are you, out of your mind? He's a creep. But that's what the Siri Singh Sahib was trying to teach, that there's a level there that we rarely touch upon because we're involved in the mundane. And it's the same as Krishna was saying, it's the same for all peoples, no matter who you are, that there's a spirit and an essence that we have to learn to relate to that in order to elevate.
And that's our challenge. It's like a hunt, an Easter egg hunt or some other kind of hunt. Our job is to, I believe, my job is to find that, find that. Find it in the chaos, find it in the anger, find it in the pain, find it in the stupid stuff, both in myself and in everyone that I'm around, so that I can really truly see God in all, knowing that the polarities of the positive, negative mind are always there, right? Knowing that the divine is not always showing up as a sweet, beautiful thing that's going to kiss you all the time, but knowing that that hard fire is a part of the divine also. And therefore, if that shows up in someone in some way, my job for me is to see that, understand that, recognize that, and just hold the space for it. It's my constant effort and reminder, my constant, when I talked earlier about, my foundational belief system, it's that. It's just that, which means that I could be mad 1 second, but I'm not totally mad. I'm mad at the behavior, but I find that I got to find that, and that's not always easy. But I know that I won't be true to myself or to my teacher if I don't keep looking to see it, not pretend it, not to layer it on like I should see this, I should see that, but to actually see it and hold it with a sense of reverence, despite everything else. So that's an exciting job, but it definitely, what I've been doing since Siri Singh Sahib Corp, I've been working on that. Both on the political scene, on the social scene, and on the scene in our communities, and all this stuff, just, okay, what are you really seeing? What part of you is seeing that? What are you really holding? What part of you is holding that,
I do. I have a question for our interpreter. Iftakhar, can you see questions and answers? Because there are 2 questions on Espanola. Can you see those? Can you convey those to us? Maybe you text me, send me a WhatsApp text, unless there's some better way. Okay, so we want to answer those questions. And yeah, I'm wondering, I mean, we have a great depth of experience. We have so much. We have a depth of experience Siri Singh Sahib has given us. He's directed us to the City Guru Granth Sahib. We have our experiences there. We have Siri Singh Sahib Corporation, which I have no experience of. And some of your founding members. And Guru Amrit says he has experience with organizational structures. I'm wondering, do any of you have any humble, visionary suggestions as to how this organization, I mean, are there elements of self-correction in the way the organization is made, or do we need a new constitution? What's a positive way forward? A referendum would help? Anybody?
I'll chime in. You want to go, Guru Amrit? No, I just have a couple of thoughts about where we are right now. You know, and the Siri Singh Sahib said this to us, you have to be known for your service. And we're not. And 3HO is known as an organization that, you know, teaches yoga to people, and they give them money, and they're looking for money, and they want to, you know, have a relationship that's basically a financial exchange, and you'll get something and we'll get something. KRI is in a similar situation. So, and those are our two nonprofit organizations that are our outreach. I believe that we need to be known for seva and for service. We're teaching yoga to students and to people that are kind of somewhat fringe people. You know, they're spiritual seekers. That's great, but we're not reaching into the meat and the heart of the working people. We're not teaching in police stations. We're not teaching in fire stations. We're not teaching, you know, I guess there are some stuff with nurses and doctors, but we're not reaching people that need to have the balance and solidity of Kundalini Yoga. I believe we need to reorganize KRI and 3HO into one entity, give it a new name, and have an outreach that focuses on spreading the teachings, not trying to monetize the teachings and having a big salary for the CEO, because that's what's happened over the years. I don't have much use for 3HO. I don't have, you know, KRI. I interact with them because they come here for courses in the summer, and I have a lot of interactions. And they're very professional people, but they make good money. And they've been drifting. They've been drifting off into, I see some of the people that come here for the 30-day immersion course, and it's kind of befuddling, you know, what are you getting their money, but what is this person going to do when they leave? And it seems like if we had a way to reach more into mainstream society with the teachings, like that gentleman in Virginia is doing with the schools, if you could get the information to people in a way that they could utilize it in their lives, I think we would be better served, because I don't think this monetary model that we have now hasn't served. Obviously, we wouldn't be having this rift if it was all perfect. And I think that's the message here for us. And structurally, I think that KRI and 3HO need to file bankruptcy. And that will actually protect them from legal ramifications, from suits and whatnot. And that's what I think needs to go forward. We need to create a new structure that will have more meaning to more people, rather than just a rarefied group of spiritual seekers that are looking for whatever answer to whatever question they have. So,
Thank you. Robert?
Yeah, the Siri Singh Sahib was a real believer in grassroots. he did not like large institutions and complicated structures and hierarchies and all of that. He believed in the the root of everything at the individual level. I think, and given, I do like analyzing structures, but I'm a businessman. So in business, you can create, a huge structure and it'll fail if you don't have the value of the product. Usually it works the other way around. The value of the product drives the organization. And it's similar to what Amrit was saying, we have to get back to our roots. And our roots is simply doing what the Siri Singh Sahib did. Come individual by individual, person by person, teach, help, heal. That will attract energy around them. They'll need infrastructure, they'll figure something out, and that gets a little bigger. And, so long as the spirit is right in the beginning, the infrastructure will follow. I don't know what the current infrastructure is going to evolve into or devolve and have to be rebuilt again. I honestly don't know, but I don't think we have to figure it out either. I think, so long as we are true to our grassroots and, the Siri Singh Sahib gave the perfect example, then the structures will, they'll follow. We don't need to figure it out now. So no.
I'm wondering here, because I've not been a student of all the intellectual things Yogi Bhajan did. I know the heart of what he offered in, but if I'm not mistaken, he talked about how individuals fail, but organizations don't fail. In the sense that he pushed for organizations, he pushed for all these things. He wanted to have KRI, he wanted to have these things. So I'm hearing differently now from both of you, and I'm not sure how to understand it. I wasn't paying a lot of attention to those things. I was busy just doing what I did, and wherever I fit in, I fit in. But I wonder, and that's one side of it. The other side is that if these things are being somehow dismantled or destroyed because of the times, because of the situation, then that's in the Guru's hands. And maybe what we're experiencing is the dismantling of some of these things because they were maybe not built on the kind of foundation that it needs to, or that the design, of it was not really thought out to match where it is that we really need to go and need to do. Because I do believe that we have one of the most incredible technologies on the planet. Absolutely, without a doubt. And I've seen people do pieces of it. I've seen people teach pieces of it. I've seen mix up parts of it that people are doing that are just not getting there at all, But the absolute technology of it is so powerful. And with that, I'm agreeing with Amrit Singh also that if we could find ways to just even keep a minimal lifestyle going to afford to do this, because this is not easy to do without having some financial backup behind you, would be to go into some of these places and create opportunities to share. And then on the other side of that, sorry for this rambling around here, but because there's so much yoga out there now and so much science around it and so much research and so much understanding of the need of this technology, that I would think it would be even easier to restructure, in a way that would put us more towards the seva aspect of it. But I think, and I'm agreeing that I think coming from that place of serving is important. I was in China and I went to this beautiful mosque up on the hill, not mosque, but a big castle on the hill. And I was taking a tour and I went inside to this one room and there was an old man sitting there who was the one who was refurbishing this beautiful temple. And we bowed to each other and we spoke, and I had some translators there, and we started talking, and he says, are you a Sikh? I said, yes. He says, I love Sikhs. We're the same thing. We're the same thing. We're always at these at these big conventions of multi-religious conventions. And the Sikhs, they always serve people. They always serve people, you know. They're there night and day and they serve people. They serve people. And I realized his impression of my being a Sikh was that I reflected his memory and experience with the Sikhs because they were always there to serve. So I'm saying, backing around where I went through that, I think that is important for us to really think about that and to make that our goal, our premise. At the same time, we need to make sure we can assure a foundation that will last beyond us and that will last forever. I don't know. There's a businessman here who can talk about how can you do both of those things at the same time, you know? How can you be, and I don't think it's undoable. I think it is totally doable. But I would be happy to know how to serve that happening.
I see that every day, Krishna. You know, it's a principle of Purusha and Prakriti. It's a metaphysical
Purusha,
dynamic.
Prakriti.
Purusha means the
Purusha,
unmanifest, the
right,
being,
Prakriti.
and Prakriti means the mother nature. Yogaji taught that more than once. You know, if the intention is pure, stuff comes.
Yeah.
Well, let's just say, a couple of days ago, well, more than that, it's been dawning on me that we have a large Sangat in the South, in the Spanish-speaking world, in the Latin American world, and that they are missing out on this discussion. Okay, so that was in my meditation, and you know what? The cosmos heard, and you know what happened 2 days ago? An interpreter showed up. There's an interpreter there. So if you know, this happens. People come, things come, money comes when the intention is there and it's very strong. You know, and it's not about you anymore. So that happens all the time. It's not you have to have a degree in business, although Yogichi had one of those. But that's the principle, and that's the principle that how Yogiji was able to have this massive organization and family manifest around him, because his intent was so pure.
His vision was clear. He could see it. He could see it. To me, that's what I'm thinking, that the vision, collective vision, I don't think is that clear. And maybe that's the place where if these things fall apart, if there's some shifting in three joke care or whatever else behind this, and it's God's grace for sure. And maybe that means for us that we should have more time to sit and vision. There was a story I heard about Buddhist monks that would sit together, elders would sit together, and they would just talk about things, visioning, talking, discussing, but they never took a vote, and they never made a final decision on anything. But they just discussed it, and then they go away, come back later, and they would discuss. But it's as though they were creating some energetic communication about what it was. They were refining it on a certain level so that it could manifest itself, you know. It was interesting that we need to come to a decision. We got to have a vote. We got to make this stuff, and we need to do it soon, because otherwise we're wasting our time, you know. And I'm wondering if maybe this opening that's happening is providing for us the opportunity to just, as my mother used to say, don't just sit there, do something. Buddhists say, don't just do something, sit there. Maybe we need to spend more time just sitting there and sharing and talking, opening the space without trying to close it down to some finite reality, but allow that to be an automatic, organic process. I don't know.
You do know. That's not a good mantra, I don't know. You do know. You're very clear.
Yeah.
Let me add, I'm not aware whether you panelists have been reading the chat or the questions and answers. We still need the translation, the traduction Espanol. Yeah. But we have a comment from Guru Tirat Singh, our former chancellor, and he's reminding us that the Sri Singh Sahib said that we should not be making our bread and butter from teaching Kundalini Yoga. We should offer that as a service.
Yeah.
And we've gone away from that. Some people, they're buying their Mercedes and their big house all with their teaching earnings. It's not where we were supposed to be going.
Can I mention something?
Sure.
so this idea of getting together, we, in the Virginia ashram, we had a period where we went through a really hard time, and the Siri Singh Sahib came, and there were, like there were opinions all over the place, right, left, and middle. And the Siri Singh Sahib came and he said, look, this is what I want you to do. I want you to every night chant at somebody's house and then go to somebody else's house and have dessert. and so we did that, and we did that for God, like 3 or 4 years. And it was so wonderful. And it really, really brought everybody back together. And, so much more so than, administrative council meeting. And it's like I learned something a long time ago, and that is, when you've got a problem, it's like you're in a box and you keep hitting the walls of the box, and there's no way out. You're done. But there is one way out, and it's up, to get out the top of the box. And I keep thinking about that whenever I get stuck in some unsolvable problem. I think, well, just elevate, and I'm out of the box. And by the way, you didn't solve the problem; it just disappeared. And that's what he was doing. In that, okay, look, don't sit. I'm not saying we shouldn't also talk to each other, but his feeling for, when talk gets to be where you're just butting heads, get together and chant, and then go eat together, and just be together without the butting heads part, and be together in a process of elevation. And it sure worked for our ashram. It was really a miracle, and we all got really fat.
Good dessert.
Krishna Singh kept saying that to us in the Siri Singh Sahib Corporation, that we needed to spend more time. We never did it. I mean, we did a couple little meditation things, but that we needed to sit together and meditate together, and find that space of commonality. And I really resonated with that, but it never really happened, because there was always something that was happening that needed to be dealt with, blah, blah, blah. And we wouldn't take the time to really try to reach that place, like Guru Amrit says, that's above the box, not in running around banging on the walls.
Maybe now that
Tried
we're
that
not.
also. I tried so much to bring, let's do the 21 stages of meditation together, Let's do something that is another part of who we are and what we're serving and what we're learning. And that was not the right thing, obviously, because it didn't work very well. But I think that's definitely a missing part of it, for sure. Just sitting together, chanting together, meditating together, not just a little few minutes in the beginning of a meeting, but just as a whole hour or whatever. And I watch the things that we have to say and share and learn become so easily shared and learned, because the weight of them is gone.
Speaking of which, Liptar Singh has said that he would lead us out with some chanting. Are we in agreement about that? And if we can get those Spanish questions, we'll address them, but I'm not getting them. Huh? Well, anyway, okay. So let's see if I can figure out how to get Liptar Singh on board.
Could I say one thing before we do
Absolutely.
that?
Yeah.
I sing Song of the Khalsa every single morning. It is the most amazing song. It's just the most amazing song that's ever been written in the history of the world. I just wanted to say that.
Okay. So we better, maybe when we start chanting, then you can start doing that, huh? Okay. Oh. I think okay, we have a silence here. Can you give me those questions right now? And I'll see if I can get Liptar Singh on board at the same time. Liptar Singh,
I see he's here.
you see? Ah,
Yes,
I don't see you, but as long as you're there,
I
great.
see him. He's got
Can you
this
hear
guy
me?
as a-
I can hear you. And you can see him, Krishna.
Well, yes, he's got the Siri Singh Sahib's picture there as his stand-in.
You're seeing different than I'm seeing, but that's good. Let's just wait a moment. We're going to get those translations, if possible.
I'm actually logged in under Guru Trong.
Oh,
Do you see
Okay.
Guru Trong there?
I see the Siri Singh side.
That should be me.
Well, that should be all of us.
Well, I see your name, Liftar Singh, right beside
Where's
the
my,
Siri-
hang on. Turn on my camera. No, I got the camera on. Well, I'm not showing any way to turn on a camera, but
Maybe I wonder if I can do that. I don't think so.
We can hear you, Liptar. It's good.
you can hear me now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
okay. Did you want to do those questions or you want to do this?
I'm still not getting the questions. We're waiting, but you know, as you start chanting, that'll give our interpreter some time to concentrate. Oh, I think I might have it. Hang on. I think maybe just one moment. Maybe we've got it here. I think she typed it into the Q&A. Did she? Okay, here we go. So someone is saying, oh, I think that's Liftar Singh. You're talking about the Khalsa Council's first meeting each day was supposed to be sudden, right? That was you.
That was me making a
There,
comment.
our interpreter is also Liftar. That's Liftar Kaur. I'm not seeing her message. Okay, Liftar Kaur, can you send me by WhatsApp? Text it to me. Okay, Liftar Singh, please go.
Guru Guru Vahe Guru Guru Ramdas
Guru,
Guru
Guru,
Vahe Guru Ramdas Guru Guru Vahe Guru Guru Ramdas Guru Guru Vahe Guru Guru Ramdas Guru Vahe Guru Ramdas Guru Guru Vahe Guru Ramdas Guru Guru Vahe Guru Guru Ramdas Guru Guru Vahe Guru 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 Guru
It was very sweet and very appropriate. Litar Singh ji, you can just take us out with a long time sound, please.
May the long time sun shine upon you, all love surround you, and the pure light within you guide your way on. May the long time sun shine upon you, all love surround you, and the pure light within you guide your way on. Guide your way on. Guide your way on. Satnam.
Formless in every form, light in every substance, creator of all this creation, unifier, destroyer, sustainer. We thank you for creating this miraculous gathering, the marvels of technology and the marvels of pure human intention. May we live as one, may we live as people of love, may we live for each other, may we carry this beautiful inspiration, this destiny, this mission of the Siri Singh Sahib forward through our lives, through our thoughts, through our words, through our deeds, and by your grace through coming generations. Love to all, peace to all, life to all. Satnam.
Satnam, and I want to mention, are we still here?
We're still here.
Every night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, there's a half an hour Zoom chant, Guru Ram Das chanting. And all you have to do to get there is put grd4.com/chant and just put that into your browser. Don't bother to go into Zoom first or anything. It'll just open it up automatically. It's grd4.com/chant.
Waheguru. Thank you for that. Any closing comments from anybody? No. We got the translations. One was simply a thank you, gracias. And the other was a little bit technical question. Best answer I have is que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. I don't have any specific answer for that. Let's leave on a high note. Okay, if you have any questions still, you can email me. And this should all be recorded and online soon. And if you have trouble finding that, just email me. Thank you all so very much. Gracias. Todo mundo, everybody. Satnam.
Waheguru.
Very good. Satnam. Liftar Singh, are you still there?